Hello, welcome to another Sonic Lab special product presentation. I'm here with Jed Allen from Universal Audio, and we've got a bit of a sneak preview prior to MESSE, though you're probably seeing this as the show opens, of the Apollo, well, what's it called?
The Apollo 16.
Apollo 16. They didn't get that far in terms of moon launches, did they? But
no. You got to be.
So what is this then?
Well, it's the next member of the Apollo family, really. We've got an Apollo Duo now. We've got an Apollo Quad, and this product is designed for a more professional use, maybe used in smaller studios where maybe they already have mic preamps, they already have headphone mixes. So it has more ins and outs, but less of some of the features that the Apollo has. So it's a different product, but in the same family.
Okay, so maybe we can have a look at the hardware itself and
Yep.
just take a look around the unit. So starting at the front, what do we got?
Well, it's obviously slightly different to the Apollo Duo and Quad, mainly because it's got 16 ins and outs. You need to have a far bigger meter screen, and you'll also notice that there are no high Z inputs and there are no headphone sockets on the front panel. That's because this unit has more analog I/O, but it has doesn't have the headphone sockets and doesn't have the high Z on the front of the units like the Apollo Duo and the Apollo Quad.
So here we've got 16 ins,
Yep.
whereas we had 8 ins plus there wasn't there a 4.
Yeah.
For the
4-channel mic preamp, you can select mic preamp here. Yeah, there's a button here that lets you select between looking at your inputs and outputs of your meters.
Okay.
So if you're trying to monitor a signal coming in and you're trying to monitor what's going back to the desk. So as I say, really, it's designed for more someone with an existing mixer or existing patch-based systems or already owning a large quantity of mic pre's, and therefore the Apollo is more cater for someone who wants to be able to have a whole system portable with the mic pre's and headphone amps and everything else.
Okay, well let's take a look at the ins and outs as well. All the connections are on D subs, right?
That's correct, yeah. Whereas obviously the Apollo was on a 1/4-inch jack.
So presumably you can put whatever tails you want on these, and so XLRs or balance or whatever, or bantams or whatever you want. So what format are these?
It's the Tascam wiring format, so the standard D sub wiring. Yeah.
Okay, and monitor outputs on XLR.
Yep. And an AES digital output as opposed to a SPDIF.
And does that mirror the monitor output?
It does, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
and then we've got B&C.
Yep.
This is a Firewire version, right?
It is, yeah, although it could also use the same Thunderbolt option as the Apollo card does.
That goes in here, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And we've got MADI here. That's not something I was expecting to see. What's that for?
No, well, from the launch of this product, you're going to be able to use multiple units from day one. So we previewed this at NAMM for the Apollo. So you'll actually be able to use 2 A16s together at the same time to get 32 I/O from the 2 units.
Oh, right, okay. But so the MADI's just for linking them together, not...
Yes, so the MADI is the most efficient way for linking the 2 units together to pass the audio between the 2 units. So
right, okay.
The MADI is, that's what the MADI is there for.
So the form factor is exactly the same, 19-inch rack, 1U. What about DSP configuration? Because obviously there's more going on here. Is it...
Well, there's only a quad version of this. As in the Apollo, there's a Duo and a Quad. Obviously, again, because it's aimed at a more high-level customer, it makes more sense just to have a quad-only version. So there's a quad processing. And obviously, you can expand via Thunderbolt like you can with all the Apollo models.
So if I had a couple of these in my rack, I'd be getting a decent amount. I'd have eight cores of Shark processing, right?
Yep, and 32 I/O as well.
But it's got the same kind of real-time processing concept as the other Apollo, so you can process signals in real time with the same sort of degree of latency, which is...
identical. So the core features of the sub-2 millisecond latency on the plugins is exactly the same.
And that was the thing that really impressed me about the Apollo when we reviewed it last year, was the fact of that real-time thing. But although with the original Apollo, there wasn't quite so much I/O potential. Can I do a bit more in terms of real-time processing on the ins and outs with this?
Yes, you can. There are some software features which will feature both for the Apollo and the Apollo 16, and there are some hardware features that are built into the Apollo 16 which will feature 4 independently assignable Q sends in the Apollo 16.
And are they mono or stereo?
Stereo, yeah.
Oh, so we could potentially get 8 outputs out of it plus the stereo bus, so 10 I/O kind of processing. I'm thinking in terms of live rack, you could actually process real-time 10 things.
Yes, I mean, I think the design of the product is a studio product, but we know that people are using Apollos live, and so inevitably part of the feedback we got was to have more flexible routing with the unit, and with the Apollo 16, because it's different inside, we've been able to put the Q sends in there.
Right. So I guess this is probably a good time to take a look at the software, right?
Yeah, that's it. There's some changes in software. As I said, some of it will apply to both units, some of it will only apply to the A16.
Right. So the screen here, explain what's going on. We've got our standard tracks, right?
Yep.
And what's this virtual business? This is all a bit new.
It is, and this is actually a feature that will work both on the existing Apollo Duo and Quad and on the A16. What we let you do now is have virtual tracks where you can bring the...
Oh, that's these guys here, right? Virtual.
Yeah, that's right. You can actually bring the outputs from your virtual instruments in your DAW into the console software, apply the plugins with a low latency, and then go back to your DAW. So this will be fantastic for people who run a lot of native software on their host. I should have said host.
So essentially what we've got there is virtual inputs that are kind of patchable in software into the, and then using the DSP to process in real time.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Again, that was one of the big feedback we got was, people would say, this is great, but I use so many virtual instruments now, not physical inputs. I'd like to better use the UAD processing on those as well. So this is the feature we brought in.
So is there a limit to the number of virtual inputs that you can run within the console?
Yes, there will be. That's something that's not finalised yet.
Okay, so it's probably down to DSP routing, all sorts of things,
yes.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to the software here, we've got the same thing, same 4 sets of it, 4 inserts per channel, 2 Q mixes, well actually 2 sends, but these can be sent to one of the 4 Qs.
Yeah.
And so what's going on here? So if we wanted to, presumably this is the output assigned for each of the mixes, yeah?
Yep. Basically, you'll notice the graphics have also changed here. These were just purely knobs, not faders before, and that was another piece of feedback that people would like to see faders for the levels on the cues. So we've done that.
And one of the other things that I was also mentioning in the review was MIDI control of that. Is that on the horizon yet? Is that happening?
Again, one of the many requests we've had, and a very good request, but nothing.
Not yet. Okay. Yeah. So what typically? You're saying this is aimed kind of primarily at a studio guy, right? So are there any kind of expansions in the plugin range to kind of take into account the extra I/O, or is it just more of the same?
More of the same. I think, when you look at the companies that we deal with, we're dealing with Lexicon, we're dealing with high-end studio products, Manley, Lexicon. So I think we already have the DSP plugins. It's just that people have said, well, I'd like to have more I/O in my system. I'd like to better, bring more signals in and out, and that's where the drive was to go to 16 rather than 8 for the analog I/O, and obviously with 2 units that can now be 32.
So is 2 the maximum number you can chain together?
It is, yes.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So,
and when you do that, the mixer will actually grow, so you'll still only have 1 mixer within the console. The console will just be longer and show all the inputs from 32 rather than 16.
So presumably if you're integrating this together with stuff on your UAD core system that you might have as well on PCI or whatever, how does that work in terms of the real-time stuff? Is it treated as separate types of plugins, or?
Well, I mean, they would normally be engaged in your DAW,
right?
Because
right. So they'll only run; they won't run in the mixer.
They can't run at the front end because they're not actually on board on the A16. So in the same way with the Apollo, you can actually obviously use the plugins that you already have inside the Apollo or the A16 when you're mixing as well. So if you finish tracking and you then release those plugins, and then you can use them to add to your mix, and then you can add any additional power from DSP cards that you have as well.
I suppose that brings up a question about authorization. So I mean, is there the plugins any authorized plugins will run on either of those core systems?
Yeah, so we run a system called groups. In each group you can have up to 4 items. So if you have an Apollo 16 and a UAD2 Octo and a UAD2 Quad, they would all run in the same group, and all the plugins would be shared across all 4 items in the group.
Okay, and is there any kind of specific bundles that will be going? Because I'm presuming this is more of a sort of premium price, being more sort of tied with the more I/O, yes, presumably?
No, I mean, everything ships with the Analog Classics, which is the standard software that ships with all the UAD2s. And because it's such a personal choice, that people will normally choose the plugins that they prefer. They may prefer the SSL EQ, they may prefer the Neve EQ. So we leave that to the customer to choose which ones he prefers.
So, of course, now it's available on the PC as well, right?
Yes, yeah. All of our products have been cross-platform since December. So everything's 64-bit, everything's Mac and Windows. And
presumably the Apollo 16 will be able to run on that too, right?
It will. The only exception at the moment is the Thunderbolt is not supported on Windows.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's not so many Thunderbolt Windows devices yet.
No, they're slowly coming, and we hear that there's more on the way. But so presently, it's a Mac only for Thunderbolt, but that's something we expect to change throughout this year.
So this unit here is one of the kind of, it's quite rare, I suppose. It's one of the sort of first pre-production units, right?
Yeah, this is actually a production unit.
Right.
And we are aim to be shipping full production units in May. So we're quite close to to shipping.
Okay, and what sort of price range are we talking for this?
This is the US map price of $2,999,
Right.
whereas the Apollo Quad is $2,499. Obviously, you have to look at, when you look at local pricing, you get VATs involved.
But that's a general guide, so it's about $500 more for the extra I/O.
Yes.
And do you presumably you don't get any of the cabling with that? That's up to you to.
No, because again, it will be your choice, because each customer will have different needs from cabling. So we wouldn't want to include something that wasn't being used.
So I'm interested, going back to the live thing, I'm kind of fixated on it, because when it was first announced, I just thought, wow, that is amazing. I mean, the concept of being able to use some of these UAD plugins in real time on a live situation. Are you finding that that's been adopted quite widely by Apollo users?
Yes, I mean, we do know Apollo users who use it at home to do their tracking and their mixing, and then take it to the gig and use it just for the Roland Space Echo or the Lexicon or something like that. So it is happening, but it's obviously not what the product was designed to do. It's a positive effect of the technology being used in a different way. And
as far as the Thunderbolt option goes, I remember there was a bit of a delay for that coming out. That's now fully available, is it?
It is from day one, exactly the same Thunderbolt option card as used in the other Apollos. And now with the availability of Thunderbolt chassis as well, you can quite easily add on multiple DSP cards that you may already have. If you're changing computer, for instance.
Is that the Magma one that you can do?
Yeah, there's a Magma and there's a Sonnet Tech as well. There's two companies.
Oh, I didn't know there was a third one. Well,
yeah,
interesting. A second one, rather.
A second one, yeah.
So presumably that means, on the modern laptop, you could be running quite an enormous number of UAD Shark chips just from a Thunderbolt I/O, right?
Well, yes, and if you look at it from the same point of view, in a 4U rack, you could have 32 I/O, including and the chassis with the Thunderbolt in it, and you'd have 24 Shark chips and 32 I/O in a 4U rack, which could be controlled by a laptop, making a very portable solution.
And I guess the thing is now, because pretty much all the major DAW now have native modes, that you've got access to all that extra DSP power, right?
Yeah, and obviously we can run with Core Audio, with any of the Core Audio DAWs that are out there. So the choice of DAW is really down to you.
So thanks very much for coming down and showing us this sort of on its way to MESSE. Incidentally, if you are at MESSE and you've watched this on day one, you should be able to actually see it in the flesh on the stand, right?
There'll be demos every day with using the A16.
So have you got Fab demoing again?
We have, yes. Fab's demoing with a live accordion player, so a very interesting demo as ever.
Very European.
Very Euro. She's actually French, so it's a very European demo, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Jed, for
much.
coming down and showing us. Cheers.